The Alpha King publicly humiliated his Luna, then lost everything the night she walked away. Seren had been the Luna of the Dravenmore Kingdom for 7 years. She had stood beside Kael at every council meeting. She had held his arm during ceremonies in the freezing cold without complaint. She had learned the names of every elder, every pack elder's wife, every child presented to the throne. She had done all of this quietly, carefully, the way a woman does when she loves someone who does not quite understand how to be loved back. 7 years, and in all that time, Kael had never once said, "I could not do this without you." Not because it was not true, because it never occurred to him to say it. He was a brilliant man, everyone agreed on that. He had doubled the kingdom's trade routes before he turned 30. He had ended a border conflict that had lasted 19 years, through sheer patience and nerve. When he walked into a room, people felt it. The temperature changed, the conversations shifted. Every pair of eyes tracked him without meaning to. Seren had loved him for exactly that, and over 7 years, that same quality, the force of him, the way he filled every space, had slowly made her feel like she was disappearing inside her own life. She told herself it was fine. She told herself this was simply what it meant to stand beside a great man. She believed it, for a long time. The Winter Solstice Feast was the largest event the Dravenmore Kingdom held each year. 600 guests. Lords from 3 neighboring territories. Long tables covered in dark cloth and candlelight, the kind of setting that makes everything feel important and permanent. Seren wore a dress the color of deep blue-gray, like the sky just before a storm decides what it wants to do. She had chosen it weeks in advance. She had hoped, in the way she always hoped before these evenings, that tonight would be different, that Kael would look at her across the room and remember, for once, that she was a person who existed inside her own thoughts. The dinner went well for the first 2 hours. Wine was poured, toasts were made. The visiting lords were impressive and polite, the way powerful men are when they are in someone else's hall. Then the conversation turned to a trade agreement with the Eastern Territories. Numbers were discussed. Terms were proposed. One of the visiting lords mentioned a specific clause that Seren recognized immediately. She had read the original document 3 months earlier, had even flagged that particular clause as potentially damaging to the kingdom's grain supply commitments. She spoke, quietly, 2 sentences, directed to the table, factual and clear. The room paused. Kael laughed. Not a warm laugh, not an embarrassed laugh, the other kind. The kind that arrives with a slight tilt of the head, that signals the speaker has decided the moment is a performance opportunity. "My Luna speaks on matters above her area of knowledge," he said. He said it pleasantly, the way someone states something obvious and harmless. Her role is the home and the family, not the trade table. He smiled. A few people at the table smiled with him, because that is what people do when a powerful man smiles at something. 600 people looked at Seren. She picked up her wine glass. She held it with both hands. She looked at a point just past Kael's left shoulder, and she stayed exactly where she was, and she did not move, and she did not speak, and her face gave nothing away. She stayed at that table for 2 more hours. She was perfect for 2 more hours. And then she went to bed. And she lay on her side in the dark with both eyes open, and she thought, with a strange and quiet clarity, that she was done. Not angry, not heartbroken, simply done, the way a candle is done when the wax runs out. No drama, just the light, going. She left at 4 in the morning. 1 bag, her grandmother's ring, which she had kept in a drawer because Kael once said it looked old-fashioned. A book she had been trying to finish for 3 months, that kept ending up buried under his papers on the shared desk. She took the book. No note. She had written notes before, long, careful letters explaining how she felt, what she needed, what she thought was going wrong between them. He had read them with a furrowed brow, and then not changed a single thing. She had learned that her words, directed at him, were a door that opened onto a wall. So this time, silence. The door closed from the outside. She crossed the main gate as the sky was still black. No guards stopped her. She was the Luna. She had the right to come and go. It had never occurred to anyone, including Kael, that she might use that right to leave entirely. The bond between a mated pair is not a metaphor. It is real and physical. something that sits in the chest like a low hum, like a fire that never fully goes out. When Seren chose to break it, formally, deliberately, through the renunciation only a Luna could enact, it did not happen in an instant. It happened slowly, over the first hour of her walking, like a knot being carefully untied. By sunrise, it was done. Every wolf in the Dravenmoor territory felt it at once, not like a sound, like the absence of a sound they had stopped noticing until it was gone. Kael woke with his hand flat against his chest, pressing hard, searching for something that was no longer there. He assumed she would come back. This was not arrogance exactly. It was just that he had never once considered that she might not. He sent searchers. He sent her family a message. He waited 3 days with the particular confidence of a man who has never had to wait for anything important. She did not come back. The political damage arrived before the personal reality did. Territory lords noticed the empty seat at the high table. The elders, the oldest governing body in the kingdom, older than Kael's bloodline, convened on the 8th day after her departure. There had not been an unpartnered Alpha King in the Dravenmoor line in 3 generations. The law was clear. A king without a Luna was a king without the moon. Those were the words they used, the old words, and they said them to his face without apology. 2 territory lords withdrew their pledges of alliance within the month, not with anger, with letters. Polite, careful letters that explained nothing and said everything. The council majority was voted into executive authority by the 6th week. Kael retained the title. He lost the power. The throne remained. The room it sat in felt much larger than it used to. He found her on a Wednesday, in the 43rd day after she left. Not hiding, not in another great house, not under the protection of a rival Alpha. She was in a border town so ordinary it did not even have its own crest. A small settlement, near the eastern edge of the territory, where a healer ran a modest clinic for the farming families in the area. Seren was the healer's second. She was in the open-air market when he arrived. Her hair was loose, which she almost never wore it in the palace. He had liked it put up, formal, appropriate. She was carrying a basket of dried herbs. She was laughing at something the young apprentice beside her had just said. Not a polite laugh, not the careful, measured laugh she had used at his council dinners. The one that said, "I am agreeable and present." This was the other kind. The kind that caught her off guard, the kind that made her throw her head back slightly. Kael stood at the edge of the market and watched his former Luna laugh freely in a border town that had no crest. He understood something then, with a clarity that arrived too late to be useful, the way important understandings often do. She had not left him in grief. She had left in relief. He asked to speak with her. He sent word through the healer, which was the only respectful approach he could think of, which told you something about how much he had changed in 43 days. She agreed to meet him. They sat across from each other at a plain wooden table, in the small back room of the clinic, with no audience and no ceremony. He was still dressed like a king. She was dressed like herself. He said the things men say when the cost finally arrives. He said he had not meant it the way it sounded. He said he had been under pressure that night. He said he thought about what she had looked like, holding that glass with both hands, and that the image had not left him since. She listened to all of it. She did not interrupt. She did not argue. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You had a Luna. You chose a subject. Those are not the same thing, Kael. And I cannot spend the rest of my life waiting for you to learn the difference." She stood up. She thanked him for coming. She walked back through the door into the clinic. He sat at that plain wooden table for a long time. Then he went home. The elders ruled on the governance restructuring within the season. Kael remained the Alpha King in title and ceremonial function. A council of 7 held the true executive power. He attended meetings. He signed documents. He sat in a throne that fit him perfectly and felt like someone else's chair. Seren was offered a formal position, head of healing services for the eastern border region, 7 months after she left the palace. It came with a title, a small staff, and the right to make policy decisions independently. She accepted it. She signed the document with her own name, no second name attached, no title borrowed from a man she used to belong to. The work suited her. The people in the border towns knew her face now. Children waved at her in the market. The elderly healer had started calling her the one who actually listens, which she thought was the finest thing anyone had ever said about her. She still thought about Kael, some nights. She was not made of stone. 7 years is a long time, and the bond does not fully disappear, even broken. It leaves a scar the shape of a sound, the hum of a fire that once burned a certain way. But she did not go back. She finished the book, finally. It was very good. What this story is, in the end, is not about a king who lost a kingdom. Kingdoms can be rebuilt. Power finds its way back to the people built for it. It is about a woman who spent 7 years making herself smaller, in a space where she should have been allowed to take up every inch of room she needed. It is about the particular courage it takes to leave, not in anger, not with a declaration, but quietly, in the dark, with one bag and a book, before the person beside you has the chance to talk you out of it one more time. She did not leave because she stopped loving him. She left because she finally remembered what it felt like to love herself more. And that, it turned out, was more than enough.